Welcome to More Than Legal, the show where we go behind the scenes to uncover the fine print of power, purpose, and profit. I'm your host, attorney Danielle Laughlin. After almost 2 decades in the trenches of courtrooms and boardrooms, I have learned that every move leaves a mark and every deal tells a story. What will we uncover today? Let's find out. Hey, real quick, before we dive into the episode, remember, nothing you hear on this podcast is intended to be legal, financial, or tax advice. I invite you to contact any of the guests you hear by looking in the show notes for their contact information, or if you'd like to reach out to me, you can find my contact information at daniellelaughlin.com. All right, now let's get into it. Hey everybody, welcome to the show today. I am excited to introduce you to somebody that I think is going to bring you a new perspective about not just business, but also being a creative. And that is Molly Pass. Molly, thanks for coming on today. Molly is the founder and CEO of Moontrip Productions and my acting coach. Now, I will also say that we just premiered a student film last week that Molly produced and that I was a supporting role in, and that was really fun. And so Molly is an extraordinary person with a really great history, not just as a business owner, but also as an actor and entertainer. And so I think that you're going to find a lot of value with Molly's conversation today. But Molly, why don't you start by just telling everybody about yourself, how you got here, and a little bit about Moontrip.
Well, hello. I am Molly Pass, as we said, and I got into the industry as a child actor many moons ago. And so now being still an actor and now a producer and, having my own production company, I feel like I have a very varied experience with the industry and have worn a lot of hats. But Moontrip Productions spawned from my wedding videography business that I wanted to expand into full service photo and video. And so this September will be 2 years of Moontrip, but 7 years in business for me.
Awesome. So Molly, as you can see, is a very young entrepreneur. And so we're really here today to help bring maybe some clarity, maybe a little bit of just support to anybody who's out there, whether you may be a seasoned entrepreneur, but maybe you have entrepreneurial children. Maybe you are interested in exploring a creative industry, or you are a creative, but you also are a business owner, right? And how do you find balance between being a creative and being an entrepreneur? Because there's a lot of overlaps between the two things. And that's what we're really going to be talking with Molly about today. So I'm really excited about that. So let's start with that topic, right? So you are originally a creative who came into business. And a lot of times we see folks that come out of a trade or a corporate skill into doing their own thing. And so how has your experience as a creative impacted your entrepreneurship?
I think that really and truly my entrepreneurship spawned out of that interest in filmmaking and in trying to make that a sustainable path for my life. I highly recommend to all people who, especially my high schoolers and my younger people, try out everything that you want to do. If you can, before you leave high school, try it out so that you don't have to, all the love to my brother, Ben, if you're watching this, but it took him like 7 years to do college because he kept changing his mind about what he wanted to do for college. And so, if you kind of figure it out early in terms of what you want to do, that really helps. But I don't want to say that I started the business by accident, because I very intentionally chose to continue doing it many times. But I, in college, fell in love with wedding videos and documentaries and just this idea of memory preservation and, how can we my dad died when I was 19, and then all that we were left with were like photos and videos. And he was the guy that took the photos and the videos. So it was like we had even less. And so I think between that experience and getting to film my first wedding for free, my like one of my longtime childhood best friends was getting married, and I was thinking about it. And so I offered to shoot it for free, and I never stopped shooting after that. But I think between that experience of getting to capture that for her and then almost immediately losing my dad, I was like, how can I make this something that I can, I don't know, I guess prevent for other people in a way. I think that also as then a business owner, I realized, oh, the people whose weddings we shot actually have more needs. Some of them are business owners, or, earlier this week, I filmed a maternity shoot for a former couple, right? So like now we can kind of grow with our people, but it did start from this place of wanting to preserve memory, and also wanting to kind of have almost like, I refer to it as digital time capsules for people of these important moments in their lives.
Awesome. So like most entrepreneurs, you saw a need.
Mm-hmm.
You knew that you had the skills to solve that need. And you also had a personal experience that led you to see the need, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that is the story that I hear over and over from all of our clients, where it's, I don't know that I planned it per se.
Yeah.
I mean, some people do plan it, and I think that's great. I did plan to start my firm.
Yeah.
But I planned to start my firm after another career before I even went to law school. And so I had already known that I needed to be my own boss, because I wasn't willing.
And I understand that as well. And as a neurodivergent person, I think especially rings true. I have obsessive compulsive disorder, which is like not the color blocking thing that you think that it is. I do love organizing, but my house would not, or my car would not lend you to believe that I have OCD, because it just looks different for everybody. But I think part of that for me is I really do enjoy being able to have like control over my schedule, and like not, I have found that like personally, my mental health is really bad when I'm in like a 9-to-5 situation that is not creative or not flexible. And so I think that there's like a myriad of reasons that people would want to be their own boss. And that's why I love working with small business owners as well, because I can really help from a place of like, no, I know how hard it is to promote your stuff and how hard it is to get content out there. And like, I would love to help make your life easier, because I know how hard it is as a business owner too.
Yeah. And it's true, because you've got to do the work.
Yeah.
And you've got to promote the work, and you've got to make sure that it's to the standards.
Yeah.
And that's a lot. That's a lot of stuff. So before we got on today, we talked about how Molly is really just in entrepreneurship. I mean, I think in Moon Trip for just the last couple of years, but as an entrepreneur for longer than that. Tell us, what do you see in mindset? Like when we all get on the same Instagram, right?
God's green Instagram.
I love that. So like we all get on Instagram. We're all going to be Insta millionaires.
Yes.
Okay. I've bought at least 75,000 courses to be an Insta millionaire. And, and look, for some folks, it's easier maybe because maybe they just naturally get it. Maybe they get the right information. I don't know. But I think especially too for women, sometimes there's mindset issues. For young people, I think there can be some mindset issues, and also even just creatives, because the creatives that we work with, sometimes they don't even see they struggle to see themselves as business owners or entrepreneurs,
or just like, I don't know. I guess like without getting too deep on the pod, we can get a little deep on the pod, but like the more the more therapy I do, the more I realize we're all just dealing with the same stuff. And I think that most of the issues with mindset come from a deep feeling of unworthiness, and wherever that comes from for you, that's the deep part. Like that's a you issue, and like we all have something that makes us feel like, oh, like I should be better at XYZ, or I should blah blah blah. And I'm trying to, even as we were setting up for this podcast, we were talking about like, where should we put stuff and where should we do stuff? And I was like, I'm trying to get rid of should. I'm trying, like, we're making it work. Like, let's figure out the best with what we have. You know what I mean? But I think trying to get away from the shoulds is a big part of it for me, because I think there is, for both entrepreneurs and creatives, and especially creative entrepreneurs, imposter syndrome is something that creeps and sneaks in. And that for me, I think is one of my biggest hangups. And when I realize, I was talking to my partner about this the other day, I was like, it's so funny because sometimes in the least busy seasons, I'll get the most feedback from people that are like, oh, I see you doing all this. And it's like, because I am on Instagram promoting my brand, and people are perceiving that in their minds as like, oh, I'm like so successful and I've made it. And for me, I'm like, oh my gosh, like, we haven't had a shoot in 3 weeks. Like, I don't know what I'm going to do and stuff. And so I think just realizing that perception is not reality. And, then in the seasons where I am like rolling in the dough, maybe it looks like we're crickets online because I am busy. So, there are different times where I have to remind myself like, okay, just because it looks like, Sally Sue is doing awesome and fabulous. I love that for Sally Sue, but that doesn't mean that I am terrible because Sally Sue is having a great time. You know what I mean?
I love that. And like in the world of social media, I mean, we all know that we're smart, right? We don't need somebody to say to us.
But our ape brain will forget.
our ape brain. We're getting super deep today, but yes.
And it is, what really has changed what has really helped my digital addiction that I have, like everyone else, is realizing that it's the same like chemical situation in your brain as playing the slots.
Correct.
Like when you scroll, it's like the same, like you get like a hit or something, right? And
it's either a happy hit
or it's like the most gut-wrenching, devastating thing you've ever seen.
I just spent my last penny in the slot.
Yes. But like that's how it feels. Like I'll be scrolling through and I'll be like, oh, Sally Sue's on vacation. Oh, they're on set. They're on this. And then it's like, I just lost my daughter and my house is aflame. And like we weren't built to like, now we're getting a little deep on the pod. We weren't built to care about this many people in terms of just like physiologically, mentally. And so I think part of it too, not that I think we should have empathy for all people, but I think that in our brains, it's really hard to keep up with what 5,000 people are doing all at the same time. And that leads to the negative mindset things that we're talking about too. So I think not that it's new, everybody will tell you, but like just be mindful of your consumption, and particularly like comparison in your consumption, because I think that's the real villain. If you were to take the Scooby-Doo mask off of the what is wrong, it's that we are trying to compare our lives to everybody else's lives. And that I think is leading to the unworthiness feeling that we were talking about before, which then can become your hang up as an entrepreneur. Because if I feel like, in my case, a service, but like my product isn't worth anything, then I'm not going to be able to find the people, you know what I mean? Like it is sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yes.
Of, especially as a musician, like if you think about, oh my gosh, or as an actor, I'm going to mess up my line. The more that you think that, the more likely you are to actually make that come true.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's true. It's the energy, right? Like it's the focus. I think we talked before about Jim Rohn, and I was telling Molly, for anybody out there that knows about Jim Rohn, how prolifically brilliant he is, but also, or was, I guess, RIP to Jim. But for those that don't know, Jim Rohn is, of the kind of self-development, personal development industry, and a very prolific thinker. But one of the things that he really talks a lot about is just the daily discipline of doing the thing that needs to get done. And with social media, it can be hard to stay focused on that. I know for me, people will be like, well, I texted you. I'm like, I have my phone on do not disturb.
Yeah.
I'm not looking at my phone. If you see me if you see my green dot on social media during the day, it's because I'm intentionally going to social media for a business purpose during my day, but not for doom scrolling. I do all my doom scrolling after 6 p.m.
You're like late at night, like God intended, in my bed into the wee hours of the morning.
Trying not.
We're working on it.
Yes, we're all a work in progress here. But it's so true. And I think too, what's interesting, just kind of as a full circle, thought here, is you are a person who values creating entertainment, right? And so we all want to be entertained. And social media allows us to entertain and to be entertained.
Mm-hmm.
But there is maybe something like too much of a good thing.
Yeah.
Do you see because I feel that, and the industry, like we know, is really evolving a lot in this way, where we've got AI. Look, nothing's wrong with AI. We'll talk. I want to hear your thoughts on that.
I have so many, especially pertaining to film, but yes.
So, but we've got AI, right? We've got AI. We've got, everybody has their, here's my camera, guys.
The access to the barrier to entry is lower than it has ever been, which I think is a blessing and a curse.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about that, because it's exciting. I think, as a newbie coming into acting, I've been working with Molly and the school. Shout out to the actors scene in Beaufort. We love you. And I've been there for a few years, which started out as just sort of like a hobby, like creative outlet. And I felt like I found my people. I will say, I felt like, oh, wow, I'm this old lady lawyer, whatever, but these are my people. And I think what has been refreshing for somebody like me that's coming into the industry is that there is all this access now. There is a path to enter. Mm-hmm. And I think even 5 years ago, that maybe wasn't too true.
Yeah.
But then I also, in diving headfirst into it, I've also seen how those who have dedicated their lives to this industry right now are experiencing dramatic changes.
Yeah. Upheaval.
What do you think is important, both for the entrepreneurs that are watching, but also for the creatives that are watching? What do you find interesting and important about that?
Just like the time that we are in.
The time we are in.
Well, let me just let the spirit lead. I feel like there's so much to say. I think to start, so I'll start with, I think that there's a lot of good stuff right now. I get into this tangent, so hopefully it's an interesting tangent. But for film nerds, the classical Hollywood era is like the Casablanca era for non-film nerds, right? So you're thinking black and white movies like 40s to 60s. There's the classical Hollywood code, and everything is just sort of, we got Maryland, we got stars, like things are popping, but Hollywood exists to make money, and it's very like cookie cutter film after cookie cutter film. Sort of similar to what we see now. And that became broken up in the late 60s, early 70s with the indie boom, which I could see happening again. And I think that is my optimistic approach about where we are at, because the barrier to entry is so low. One of Moontrip's primary functions, I believe, is to empower student filmmakers through mentorship and resources and opportunity. And so, really, I feel like we are helping to facilitate the future of film through that program. So I am hopeful in the element of, I feel like it's in good hands, and I feel like people are getting tired of the same old over and over again situation. But I think that the drawbacks are that because the barrier to entry is so low and the internet has almost become a content factory, like a content machine. We were just talking about the studio, the Seth Rogen show, and just the whole situation of like, you have a meaningful pitch for a movie that's like interesting and like a new take. And it's like literally like, who'd they get? Scorsese to do that
Scorsese.
part?
Yeah, it was Scorsese.
And like literally Scorsese. And then you've got like, some stupid like AI looking like Kool-Aid Man dancing pitch. And like, that's the one that gets the $1 billion or whatever. And it's just like, to a degree, that's so real, because at the same time as I feel that we're on the precipice of this indie boom, I also see, and like, this is all love in the world. Okay. This is my disclaimer. If you work on vertical shorts, I love that for you. And this is no shade at all. Love my cast and crew on vertical shorts. This is not at you. This is more of just a, how did we get here societally to the vertical shorts point for me. Like, we're sort of seeing things like that, which to me are just industries built on social media addiction.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, in a classic tale of good versus evil, here we are once again at the, metaphorical little angel and devil on my shoulder. Am I going to, as a filmmaker, be on the struggle bus and kind of grind out the next few
woe
years?
Is me, right? There's a lot of woe is me there.
There's a lot of woe is me. I think that you can either like woe is me and not do anything, and like, good luck, my babies. It's really hard to find work when you haven't been working, but it's like
work begets work.
Yes, but work begets work. And so that's something that I've been talking to my other indie friends about, is it's almost like, as a production company, if I am like holed up in my house and I'm like, I'm doing marketing and I'm going to market the business, like, sometimes it works, but most of the time I just, for whatever reason, the universe has not rewarded the more traditional stuff as much as it has rewarded. I'm going out, I meet somebody, I get connected. I am literally busy on a shoot. By the time I get home, I've got like 3 inquiries. It's just like something about going and doing what it is that you need to do.
The daily disciplines.
The daily disciplines add up. And then, I will get a random call of like, I found you on Google, and it's like, that's because I've been posting to my Google My Business and I pay my SEO guy a lot of money, like there's a lot of stuff that, maybe on the day-to-day feels pointless, but I think for my indie filmmakers, don't give up. Like, even if right now you're in your serving job or you're in your whatever it is that you're doing to keep the lights on. I know so many people, shout out to my friends who are working at the grocery store right now. Shout out to my friends who have, gotten a gig at the car dealership because we need a 9-to-5 to be okay, while on the weekends we're making our films. If this is the calling for you, I think we are so close to things really improving for independent filmmakers. I hope that I am correct in that. And if I'm not, we can create it. And I think that that's the beauty of the indie boom, is it really, ironically, it's guys like George Lucas, with the
Correct.
original Star Wars trilogy
Correct.
that now is part of the Hollywood movement that dragged us out. So it's like we all have the two wolves inside of us. Who are you going to?
Who are we going?
Yeah.
Well, and so we had been talking about Sinners in class,
Oh,
right?
So good.
So I finally did see it a couple weeks ago, and we're going to go
stay for both of them.
I did because you told me.
Good.
There's 2 post-credit scenes.
Don't leave.
And we were like the only ones, and I was like, we can't leave.
We can't leave.
So, but we're going again. I gotta go again,
dude.
Because first of all, I'm not even into the vampire. I'm not into the vampire scene typically, but wow, it was so well done. But also, that deal was. If that deal was getting
historic, that
was historic, and it was getting massive hate. I mean, God, the haters,
so classic
for the haters. And so I think there's also this like resistance. This is one of the things that Seth, the studio really gets into this as well. And of course, just to kind of pull the curtain back, maybe. We see this in law. We see this in every industry. We do a lot of industry work with professionals, right? Like different types of professionals. And there's always the powers that be. And we've always done it this way, status quo thinkers. And then there are the rebels, right? And this is what Steve Jobs talked about. Steve Jobs said, it's the rebels that are the ones that create the future. And I think for me, I've always been a rebel. So I see this as like, ooh,
an opportunity.
This is an opportunity. And when you find the right people to exploit the opportunity with, then a lot of magic can happen. And I think what Molly was saying too about, doing the work, you got to be careful sometimes because work sounds like this boring drudgery.
And we have to, I think as creative entrepreneurs, I was just talking to my friend Willow, again, shout out to everybody that I mentioned if you're watching this. But she was saying, it's funny, we hate the wrong parts of school. You know what I mean? But like part of it is the structure and like deadlines and like expectations. And I think, especially as creatives, it's like, well, I didn't get into this job for this and that. And it's like, but we have to have discipline. We have to have rhythms and practices in place so that, your clients are taken care of, that you're able to get more clients in the future. And just that whatever you need to creatively do, you can do, but there is an accountability that's internal there that I think not everybody has as part of it too.
It's true.
And you got to work up to it if you don't have it.
You do. And we've talked about this book before, but The War of Art, if you've never read The War of Art, because in that, Stephen Pressfield, I think, is the one who wrote that book. But in that book, he talks about the professional versus the amateur. And he aligns artists and entrepreneurs. I mean, the whole entire book is about how entrepreneurs and artists are the same.
Yeah.
And
because it's creativity.
It's creativity. You've got to think outside of the box. You got to do things in a new way. And I think one of the best things about that book is how he talks about this. And I'm not good at this. I will admit I'm not very good at this part of it. We all have work to do in life. And this is where I need to do more work. But he talks about like waking up and holding this space right when you get up for your highest and best creative work. And I want to shout out to Vida Rasmussen, who coached me through this last year. And I'm doing okay, Vida. I probably need to get back in touch with you about a few things. But, for me, maybe it's not every day. And I think that there's a season in life.
Yeah.
But just like when you wake up, do the creative thing. If you are a filmmaker, what are you writing? Do you have a writer? If you have a writer, great. You don't need to be the one writing, but maybe you need to be the one thinking through the shot list or thinking through the cast or whatever. And whatever it is that your special skill set is for that endeavor is the thing that you should start your day with. And I feel like I'm a creative that was sort of like dormant.
Yeah. And I think and I will speak to that too, because I think so many people are dormant creatives. Like the more, so I do a lot of stuff. I teach acting and vocal lessons as well. And the more that I learn about music theory, the more that I feel it's intrinsic to human beings. And I feel that way about a lot of different kinds of art. I think it just is like time. And like, I think everybody has an artist inside of them in some capacity. And like, even, something in like after, losing my dad and getting into his stuff, and he was always the one taking photos. It's like, I'm looking at these photos and it's like, he was a super talented photographer who clearly had an interest in it based on like how much camera stuff he had collected over his life. And I feel that he never felt, I don't want to be like safe enough, but like as like this, country guy, firefighter man, I don't think that he ever felt that he could pursue that creative side of himself. And I think a lot of us shut it down. And in his case, like he literally never got to explore it. And I think that there's almost nothing sadder than that. Like, I think if you have a dormant artist, because maybe like, I would love, now I'm flipping it on you, but like, what made you kind of decide to explore that, and what maybe gave you the confidence to pull the trigger on that?
Well, I mean, I think one of the things that I appreciate about you is how you stay true to yourself, right? And like, you are Molly Pass, and you are, you are doing
take it or leave
it. But you're doing your thing, and you're doing your thing as yourself. I think where I had an epiphany was I was doing things according to a formula that I had imposed upon myself.
The shoulds.
And I think, as a philosopher, I do think there is a place for should, but should in an ethical way, not in
like I must.
Not in a judgment, not in a self-judgment way. And I think there's like a judgment to a should, and that's not the right thing. I found that this was like 2021, right? So this was COVID. And I just found that I was awakening a lot of things. I had done a lot of coaching. Specifically around mindset. Shout out to David Nagel and Steph Tuss on that. And so I came to know those folks through some lawyer coaching I had done. And as a philosopher, I was always, probably going a little too deep on things. I tend to kind of go down the proverbial rabbit hole with some ideas. But one of the things that kept coming up was, you do have time.
Yeah.
You just have to make time.
Because you have time, but you have a limited amount of time. And that, I think, is like what it kept coming back to for me.
Yes. So what do you do with
do with your time? Because I think a lot of people plan. And then a few years ago, my mom, shout out to my mom if you're watching.
We are shouting
them out today. But my mom, she had this friend from work who very randomly, unexpectedly passed away. And, similar to my dad, this person was still working, never got a chance to collect retirement. And a lot of their life seemed to have been spent planning for this retirement that never came. And so I think for me, in terms of like pulling the trigger, what made me decide to like throwing it back 3 questions ago, like what made me start this as a business is I was like, well, I could, go to vet school and make a lot of money and not be very happy, admittedly, or I could do this thing that I feel I'm supposed to do that I feel like gives my life purpose. And it's going to be a lot harder, but like I felt it like I had to. And I hope that you still feel that now that the filmmaking bug has hit you a little bit.
Oh, absolutely. I think too that there's so much there. I mean, another thing that I really, see or maybe envision, I guess, is that the more these barriers break down, the more we all can see that there's really no difference between you and me, right? Like there's really no difference between a lawyer, right? Like a 40 something year old. I know it's hard to tell, but
It is hard to tell.
but like in my 40s now, and now my kids are going into college next year, and I'm looking at them and I'm like, I still feel like them in so many ways. Like I don't view myself the way the world views me. I think that's another thing. So as these barriers come down, it's like I want to be part of that conversation where it's like, what are you up to, Molly? What? I don't need to sit here every day talking to we've had some impressive exit founders. We've had, I don't need to sit here every day and talk to the people that have the resume that the world says is the resume to have.
Yeah.
And I also don't want my children to feel like they are reduced to their resume. And I also want the world to know that the resume is meaningless at the end of all of this. Because like you just said, like, in our relationship, my husband and I am the entrepreneur. Of course, I'm the risk taker. Like, I'm the one who's like, we need to take this vacation. And he's like, yeah, but the budget. And I'm like, yeah, who cares about that?
We have limited time. Yeah.
Thank God for balance. And thank God for the yin yang that you can find with your significant other. But I think, one of the things that we often talk about, and one of the ways that he helped me was to realize, like, I do need to plan for tomorrow. But one of the ways that that I kind of helped him was to help him realize exactly what you were saying, which is it's wonderful. He has two amazing parents. They're in retirement right now. They did all the right things. I love you. Shout out to my in-laws. Love you, Harry and Candy. But like, they did all the right things, and they're living a retirement life that I think a lot of people aspire to live. But, not everybody in their life made it there.
Yeah.
And some folks have passed away, and some folks have not been able to achieve that. And so you live with the best intention, and you live with an eye toward the future. But I think there's also this, like, here and now.
There's the balance, because it's like and that's what I'm navigating to. I am also the risk taker in my sort of all of my partnerships, personal and professional. But I think that I'm coming to, like, how can I both steward what I have to make sure, especially in my case, that like my business can continue running and I can continue to be this hub of especially like student filmmaking. But also, how can I still make sure that I am giving myself like what I need and want to be happy, like, and finding the need versus the want is a big part of that, because like I'm so like easily influenced. But I think that just like leaning into finding, I think especially people that you can, that's really the whole thing, is like creative entrepreneurs and any kind of entrepreneurs, any kind of person, like we need community. And kind of what you were saying earlier about just like we're all the same, but like it is true. Like I love, and I have shown so many people the Ethan Hawke TED Talk, because something that he says is like being an actor, I'm going to misquote it, but he says something like, I've played sinners and priests, and I've played good guys and I've played bad guys. And like me, Ethan, the actor, is so similar to every single one of them, like on a human level, that it really gave him this deep empathy and this deep understanding that like, oh yeah, like maybe I can't necessarily take somebody at just like first glance value. And like as a casting director now, I see how much stereotyping still goes into casting, and how much of that is to a degree unavoidable, like with our human brains. But I think that we're coming a long way, but it is community that helps us kind of find what our next right thing is.
It's true. And I think that, we talked a lot about this in the typecasting world, right? Because, we all do this. Like, I just saw a post, another shout out here. Deirdre, I saw your post yesterday, and it was about cultural awareness.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that you have Native American history, and so she is an African American woman, but she was talking about cultural compassion, cultural awareness. And it's so important for cultural awareness and compassion, but just like human awareness and compassion. And, not everybody is as you perceive them to be. And I think that is a big problem with the traditional industry, entertainment industry, the typecasting. We saw a lot of controversy with different things, some remakes of some Disney classics, because we want to put a person of color, or we want to put a male in what we perceive to be a female position. And it does challenge you sometimes, because your brain has been told that certain things are right or wrong. And so I don't want to dismiss like you said, like our human brains and the way that we learn in life is through stories. And so we've been told these stories, and these stories have become part of what we view to be the reality of this world. But then when we shift and we open a door that says, well, why does it have to be that way? And that, I think, too, is a critical question that we all have to ask, no matter where we're coming from. And I think that it's important, just kind of to go back to what we said earlier about where the industry is right now, and what the opportunity versus maybe some of the downsides are, is we want to challenge the status quo. We also want to preserve the things that give us meaning and that allow us to operate in the world in a secure position. What do you think about that? How do you see the stories that we tell and how we tell them, who we cast to tell them, as reflective of maybe a deeper philosophical issue of how far is too far to push the envelope, versus is there anything that's too far? I mean,
it's a good question. It's a good series of questions. I think I'll start with to address the like recast situation, because I think that's a good place to start.
We're going off script here, so
we're going off script. But I have a lot of issue with just the constant recycling of IP, and I'm more bothered by the fact that the live action Little Mermaid happened than by anything to do with the cast. So for me, I think in terms of like reboots and like stuff like that, be so for real and get over yourself if you're stressed about what somebody looks like in the casting. If it like tears up your day, you really need to get a hobby and possibly a life. But to another point, I think that really the solution, other than getting over yourself in terms of casting people of color, because stop being weird, it's 2025. But other than that, I think that the real solution is original stories by and for people. So like we were talking about Ryan Coogler's Sinner's Deal. That's the solution to these issues, is like letting people tell their own stories. I know in that case, something that I found really interesting that has inspired me a lot. I know Isaiah and I, as you know, are working on a Western together. So more news to come. Stay tuned with Moon Trip. But I know that Ryan Coogler was talking about, doing Black Panther, and he felt like he was able to connect to part of his ancestry and part of his culture, but he skipped over a whole part. He skipped over the like American South part. And so this movie, he got to explore that and tell, honestly, like a really cool story about multiple groups of people interacting with each other, and how that shakes out when, and we've talked so much about like existential spiritual stuff, but like we're all explaining the same phenomena in our own worldview and our own understanding. And so seeing in this case how all of these different people responded to like vampires, which is like a culturally, everybody has like a vampire of some kind. And in this particular setting and in this particular time, what does that look like? And so I think in terms of like providing representation and having stories that are authentic. Stop rebooting stuff. Let's just make original concepts and invite people to the table who have stories to tell and who are trying to tell them and just need the funding to tell them.
They just need the funding.
Literally, the support. And whether that comes from the community of rebel indie filmmakers or whether that comes from, studios, like finally kind of coming around to what's working. And I think that now, last year, of course, I think had to, because of the way that the industry is, kind of had to do it this way. But I think that seeing Oppenheimer and Barbie, or I guess I say last year, 2 years ago. Oh my gosh, time flies when you're having fun.
Where are we now?
But seeing that and having two, literal back-to-back successes of what I would consider like auteur films. Like these are, while they both are inspired by particular things, the actual films themselves are very reflective of Christopher Nolan and Greta Gerwig, respectively. And I think that it kind of showed like, oh yeah, like it is like, the creator, it is the creative element that makes this so big. And then with Sinners too, you've got the combination of the directing and the music.
The music was so good.
Was such a huge part of it. And so, just I think to wrap up like the overall thoughts is just like let people tell their stories. And I think also with, not to get too far into this, but with the crisis that we're in with public broadcasting right now too, I think that we're in a time where things for independent filmmakers have a possibility of change. It could fluctuate in either direction really extremely. I know that we have, at least of the time that we're filming this, there is the 100% like tariff on outside of the country films, or like, we just are not doing that essentially. And I know that whether it was yesterday or earlier this week, the Screen Actors Guild sent in a big fat letter that pretty much addressed everything but that. Basically just like, hey, let's make more stuff in the States, but we didn't really address the elephant in the room. And so, yeah, we're at this point where I feel like with, Sinners being at the top of the box office and getting this historic deal, and everybody is tired of the way that things are and access is very open. On that side, I feel positive. But on the other side, I'm still, I think, like a lot of entrepreneurs of any kind right now, just kind of hunkering down and kind of seeing where things go, as a lot of the cash flow issues are not necessarily in our hands at this time.
So I love this because I think that, we can talk a lot about all of the cool, fun, creative stuff. We can talk about the philosophical issues. Mm-hmm. We can talk about what are the stories that we want to hear, what should be made, the shoulda, coulda, wouldas, But really the point you're making, which I think is really important for any entrepreneur, and especially in the creative industry, because everyone will find money for HVAC or for roofing, or maybe for even like landscaping. Not that you need a beautiful lawn, but like those types of things, the money will always be found because they represent this building, this place, this how we have to show up as a company or as a family. We need our house to have certain, amenities. We don't fuel our art. We've cut art programs. We discourage students from pursuing creative passion. We complain so much that there's nothing on Netflix right now and that it's just abysmal at the box office. Yeah. But yet we are not taking the fruits of our labor in other places and directing them into creative endeavors. So I think that's actually a really good place for us to maybe just kind of bring like a concluding point here, which is, it takes money for any business. Some businesses can get funding much easier than others. But in the film industry in particular, funding is critical because there's expensive equipment.
And labor, there's a lot more people than you think.
A lot of people. I mean, I went on set the very first time last year, and I mean, this was a 3-minute commercial. This was a very small production, 3-minute commercial. It had been in pre-production for, God, months probably. Yeah. There was creative director, there was producer, executive producer. There's like 3 camera guys. I don't even know. There's grip. There's a photographer. There's like all these people for this 3-minute commercial. And I don't think that people outside the industry really understand all the capital that is required to make even the student film that we just did.
And all of the like just amount of time and labor that takes.
Yeah, it's a lot. And I think that if you're watching this and you feel a tinge, you feel like you are an artist, maybe you are a creative that hasn't let that side of yourself out, there's always just donation in kind. Like we said, hey, you need to shoot a classroom, come shoot it at our office, right? We have a little classroom area here in our building. Come shoot it here. You know, we'll cover the fee. It doesn't matter. It's a very nominal thing for the firm to cover that. But also, I think it's just showing up and letting the creatives in your life or the inner creative that you have inside of you have permission to create. And with that permission comes capital. We have to have capital for this stuff. Tell us now, you are out here as a bootstrapping entrepreneur, right? Like, trust, no shame. That's what we've been doing for the last 10 years. Okay. Because in legal, you can't even get money unless you get money from a bank or you get money from other lawyers, but I can't have investors, right? So it's a very interesting regulatory issue for law firms. Have you dealt with investors? Have you considered dealing with investors? Where do you come from as an indie? Like, is there fear around investors? Is it the studio? Like, is it the Kool-Aid? You know, I'm going to lose creative control.
It's going to be AI Kool-Aid man if I invite anyone else to the table. So in terms of investors, we kind of have a way for people to contribute to our student filmmaking program. So we do have merch sales and also direct donation, which if you're interested in those things, please check out our website, which we'll talk about in a minute.
We'll put it in the show notes.
Yes, and down below. But other than that, we have mostly just partnered with other studios, at least as of now. I am highly interested in, the concept, especially because I think if we were able to, find investors to bring to the table, something I really thought about, that now that I'm saying it on a podcast, I guess I will have to actually do it. But my friend Sho and I, shout out Sho Irikawa, we're just talking about getting and I'm going to butcher this right after I shouted you out, a fiscal sponsorship. I asked Joe watching this, I think is what it's called, but a nonprofit specifically for independent filmmaking. So that is something maybe after we wrap that I could talk to you about, and see if that would be something that Sage could help with. But I'm very interested in the idea of making indie filmmaking as sustainable as I possibly can. And I think that, regardless of how anybody feels about it, investors and community engagement of literally getting everybody onto the team and having everybody's efforts kind of double or triple our ability to crowdfund, I think is a necessary evil, I'll say.
Yes, right. And I think too, there's a lot of money mindset issues. I will say I struggled a lot with money mindset issues growing up without a lot of means. Not, I didn't know any lawyers growing up. Like, that was not my life. I think that this is an important topic and one that both sides are very interested in.
Yeah.
I have spoken with other entrepreneurs who have cash that they need to maximize.
And that's the thing. That's where the nonprofit element comes in. I think once I'm able to secure that, it will be a lot more attractive to investors.
But even for profit.
True.
So one of the things that that we'll do kind of leading into this show, so by the time this airs, we'll have a predecessor episode, and I'm going to talk more about this, Molly. So I'll make sure that we get that to you. But we're going to talk about this issue because funding is critical. Georgia has a very nice tax incentive, up to 30%. Starts at a base of 20%, and then you can get the additional 10 by doing some other things. And you can aggregate that into different projects over the course of a 12-month period of time. What does that mean for the creatives? It means that there's opportunity for investment because it gives you an automatic 20% profitability to your project.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk a little bit about that separately from this episode. I'm glad we came to that topic because we didn't really plan to go there.
Yeah.
But I think you always end up where you should be.
Exactly.
So,
and that's the thing. So if you're watching this podcast and you've been thinking, listening, watching, however you're consuming this podcast, if you were really resonating with any of it, whether it was Danielle's like interest in acting and pursuing that, or my dad not getting to pursue his photography talents, like I really do encourage you guys, whether or not, you want to be a part of the industry, I think that it is a critical time to engage in art. We need your art. And I think now more than ever, people's perspectives we need to hear and see. So if you have something to share, please do. I just had to say that before we left.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I think just to encourage everyone, we all have a story to tell, right? Like we all have a story to tell. Molly has a story. We saw, this much of her story today, but like Molly has a story. And even as many interactions as we've had over the past year, I'm still learning more about your story. And I'm sure that is the same for you. I think as entrepreneurs, we know there's a story. We don't always want to tell it. Maybe it doesn't seem that sexy or exciting, but it's always helpful to other people. And so it's been so great to hear your story and to really, I was excited to talk to you today because I think one of the things over the last couple of years that has been so truly rewarding in my life has been merging my passion for business with my passion for art.
And like the closer that I get to a synergy with those things in my life, which I'm sure you feel is like some weeks are just better than others, man. But like, I think I am finally settling into that intersection. And I'm really, I want that for all of my fellow creative entrepreneurs. And part of that is just letting yourself know that you are probably doing way better than you think, and like starting with celebrating how far you already have come from wherever you started, because everybody watching this, you have a story too, and we want to hear it. So,
absolutely.
Yeah,
we sure do. So Molly, tell folks how they can find you. We're going to put all of this in the show notes, so don't worry about that. We'll choke out there. Sorry. So Molly, tell them how to find you.
Well, we are online at www.moontrip.space, but you didn't know you could get .space, but you can. Actually, you can't get that one because it's mine. We are also on Instagram at moontrip.mp4, like the video file, and we are on Facebook and LinkedIn as Moontrip Productions, which I think you'll have links for as well. So we're on YouTube, we're everywhere. So if you are on the internet, Moontrip Productions is probably lurking somewhere nearby.
Yes, and they have some really cool photography. You got to see that, like everything. In fact, you were sharing with me about a really cool concert tonight with some of your friends. So by the time this airs, it'll be long gone. But at the Oddities Museum here,
check out, if you're here, Possum Kingdom Ramblers, the band, wherever you listen to music.
Yes. So Molly, this is so refreshing. I want to thank you again for coming on. I also want to take just a moment for my own kids out there, because I've got 2 seniors that are going into college next year at Georgia State. Go Panthers.
Woo, go Thurs.
Go Thurs.
But yeah, both representing today.
Both. Yes, absolutely. So, but just a little note to my kids and any other, rising seniors heading into college or college students out there. It's okay if you haven't figured it out yet. You can get on a path like I did, and you can find another path later. You can start from where you are, and you can follow your dreams from day one. Whatever you do, remember, your story matters, and what you are doing in the world matters, whether it's corporate, whether it's creative, whether it's entrepreneurship, or anything in between. It's really critical that our youth knows that you have people here to support you. Molly is a great mentor for young filmmakers, and that we care about your future. I think sometimes it can be isolating, especially with how much social media impacts and rules the younger generation. We talked about it earlier, but just remember, the relationships that you form matter, and how you are connecting with your tribe and building that community matters. So this has been so good to kind of come full circle with you as a child who went into this industry and really turned it into your own business and your own, venture, I would say. So we're excited to see what's coming next with Moon Trip. Do you have anything on the horizon? Is there anything we need to be watching out for?
I quickly, before I tell you what's on the horizon, I just want to say, God will use wherever you are for your greater good, and whatever you subscribe to, call it what you want, the universe, whatever. But I really do believe that in every season, there's something that we're sharpening and something that we're maybe having to let go of in ourselves. Really lean into whatever the season that you're in is, even if it feels like, I'm just having to drag through this, or because we've both had those seasons that then at the end of it, it's like, I'm so glad that I went through that, or I'm so glad I didn't get that job because all this happened because I did that hard work. So I think if you're feeling it, if you're struggling, it's okay. Keep going. There's a reason that you're in what you're in right now. And if you do feel like you need, whether business, legal mentorship, or filmmaking, creative mentorship, please reach out to us, because we would love to help. That is what we do. Both of us. But in terms of things on the horizon, I have a couple of shorts planned for this year, including the Western that we talked about. A film that I acted in, Everybody Eats, is currently taken the festival circuits. So if you're able to catch a screening of Everybody Eats, follow Meta Modern Productions on Instagram to learn more. They're one of our default partners. And time will tell. The film that Danielle was in is about to enter the festival circuit. We just had our premiere, so we're going to tidy up a couple of audio things and then send it on its way. But yeah, so a couple things in pre-production, a couple things that are finally making their way around. And then I'm sure I'll be in production soon over the summer. So, it's kind of juggling pre and production and post all at the same time. But keep up with us on socials, and I will be sure to keep you along for the ride.
Love it. Love it so much, Molly. This has been great. So yes, check out the links in the show notes. Find Molly everywhere online, like she said. And thanks for tuning in today. Bye for now. Thank you for listening to the show. Remember, stay sharp, stay curious, and stay tuned for our next episode. Bye.